The Reverend John Kelly, in his historical sketch of Hampstead, written in 1837, indicated that there were Free Willers and Methodists in town as early as 1802. Until about 1884, West Hampstead Methodists met at the District 4 schoolhouse. Through the efforts of Mrs. Lucy A. Little, the West Hampstead Methodist Church was built and dedicated on June 25, 1884. Reverend Samuel Fuller of East Derry was the first minister to have charge of the new Methodist Episcopal Church, with regular services commencing in 1887. The building next to the church was known as Good Templar Hall. A ladies' sewing circle began in the fall of 1893, with Miss L. F. Sanborn as its first president. This building was later known as Sanborn Hall, and was a popular spot for many years for ham and bean suppers on Saturday nights. The church closed in the 1970s, and the church steeple was removed in the 1990s. The buildings are currently used as a retail gift store. The car in this photo is positioned on a railroad bridge. The Worcester-Nashua-Rochester branch line began operations in 1874. As you stand on the bridge looking toward the church, the new depot could be seen on your left. The original depot was located off of Depot Road, and it burned in 1913. With the coming of the automobile, usage of this line dropped off, and the last train ran in 1933. The tracks were pulled up in 1936 and sold for scrap. The railroad beds stayed abandoned for many years, before the state of New Hampshire converted them into today's popular recreational trails. Train service to West Hampstead had a significant impact on the townspeople and local economy. Because of this, the town put macadam, an early form of tar, on Main Street in West Hampstead. This proved very satisfactory as the rocky, muddy, rutting conditions caused by the increased traffic to and from the railroad were alleviated. The East Hampstead Union Church was built in 1896 for a cost of $3,119.70, and this included both the building and all of the furnishings. The first service was held on January 27th of 1897, and the church was formally dedicated shortly thereafter on April 28th of that same year by a group of ministers from around the area and as far away as Boston. The church has been in continuous use since it opened, and remained almost unchanged until 1972, when a new door was added on the west side in order to provide access to a basement activity room. Recently, the steeple had to be removed due to deterioration. The bell is temporarily housed in front of the church while funds are being raised to build a new steeple. For the first 41 years of its existence, the church didn't have its own minister, but rather Sunday services were conducted by the ministers from churches in Danville, Kingston, Hampstead, and West Hampstead. The ministers took turns holding services at 3 p.m. after they had completed the services at their home churches. One point of interest that you can see in both photographs is how long one spot has been used for parking. In the later photograph, you can see a bluish car parked in front of the church, and in the old photo, a horse and buggy is parked in the exact same spot. If you look toward the right side of this photograph, you can see the old District 7 schoolhouse, which was built about 1895 and is now the private residence at 14 Danville Road. By 1752, Hampstead had grown to the point where one small schoolhouse was inadequate to meet the town's needs, and so the selectmen were empowered by the voters to create several school districts with a schoolhouse in each district. By 1801, there were 6 school districts, and the number of active districts varied up and down over the years. What we now know as Don's Market was originally the District 3 school building. The building used to sit closer to Main Street, but was moved back to its present location when it was converted into a store about 1932. Each of the district schoolhouses had one room where all 8 grades of pupils were taught by a single teacher. Depending on how many school-age children there were in a given district, the number of students could vary between only a few to as many as 40 or so. The system of district schools continued until the late 1920s, when there were only districts 2, 3, 4, and 7 left. The district schoolhouses were getting overcrowded and run down, so the town decided to build a central school, which opened in 1931. The opening school population was 180 students in grades 1 through 6. The students were divided up so that there were 2 grades and 1 teacher assigned to each one of the 3 classrooms in the original building. The central school continued in operation until the early morning of March 3, 1944, when a janitor's pipe ashes started a fire which burned the school beyond use. The town raised $30,000 to rebuild the school, and the new central school opened in 1946. This building is still in use today, though there have been 4 additions and several renovations since it was rebuilt. The town's current police station started out life as the town's fire station and served that purpose until the new fire station on Little's Lane was built. The town of Hampstead purchased its first fire truck in 1938. It was a 1938 Ford Pumper, which cost the town $2,500. The first fire station was to be built next to Town Hall for $2,500. Members of the Fire Association and other volunteers donated their labor in order to get the building completed. The Fire Association also placed 16 fire extinguishers in homes throughout town as part of its firefighting efforts. The town experienced one of its worst fires in the year this picture was taken, 1943. A large fire in the center of town destroyed and damaged many homes. The Young Fire Association was able to save several homes due to the yet unfinished fire hole located at the post office. Other fires that year included the King's Pond fire, where a great deal of lumber was lost. All in all, the fire department responded to 39 alarms in 1943. A herd of cattle was a common scene 100 years ago on Main Street, as cattle were moved from pasture to pasture in order to feed during the summer. Oftentimes they would be moved in the spring, left on pasture during the summer, and then brought home for the winter. The pastures were located in West Hampstead, Chester, and Sandown. Several different farms participated, and these cattle were probably a collection from multiple farms. Cattle were also brought into Hampstead from the Midwest via cattle cars on the railroad. The cattle would have been dropped off at the depot and then driven down Main Street to their pasture destinations. According to town records, there were 376 head in 1872 and 289 head in 1900. This picture could have been either beef cattle being driven to market, most likely in Haverhill, or dairy cattle. In the latter part of the 19th century, Hampstead dairy farms were producing 250 cans of milk per day, and there were 40 quarts in a can. 150 cans of milk were sent to plants in Haverhill, and 100 cans were shipped by rail down to H.P. Hood in Boston. The milk business continued into the 1940s. If you look behind the cattle, you can see Isaac Randall, grandfather of our current town historian, Maury Randall. He was the postmaster and ran a general store which was located across from the Congregational Church. He purchased this store in 1895 from his brother-in-law, Alfred W. Foote. The general store carried just about everything, including grain and hay. In 1903, the first telephone switchboard was installed at the store. Isaac Randall sold the store to Joseph Frost, one of his clerks, in 1916. In 1917, the store burned down, and it was replaced with a smaller building. In 1947, this building was sold to Louis Darling, who moved the building to 10 Main Street, where it remains today as a convenience store called the Center Grocery. Hopefully, you have enjoyed our brief presentation of a small part of Hampstead's history. This program was really just a test to see how well we could present Hampstead's history on video. We would like to produce a program that covers all of Hampstead's history from settlement through to today, but we need your help. Although we have a lot of interesting material about Hampstead's history, we know that there is a lot we don't have. If you have old photographs, diaries, letters, or are old enough to remember the good old days, please stop by the Historical Society's museum on any Saturday from 1 to 4 p.m. and let us copy your materials, or contact us and arrange an interview if you want to share your recollections of Hampstead from an earlier time.